Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased to introduce President of the University of Maryland, Dr. Wallace Loh.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the University of Maryland. Thank you for being here. And coaches, you do a fantastic job. Thank you for being here today. This is today a watershed moment for the University of Maryland. I am pleased to announce that we are going to become a member of the Big Ten Conference starting July 1st of 2014. This morning, the Board of Regents of the University System of Maryland voted very strongly to endorse our application into the Big Ten. And shortly thereafter, the Council of Presidents of the Big Ten voted to admit us into the Big Ten Conference. Membership in the Big Ten is in the strategic interest of the University of Maryland. Number one, by being members of the Big Ten Conference, we will be able to ensure the financial sustainability of Maryland athletics for decades to come. As some of you know, when I came here 2 years ago, Kevin Anderson and I were faced unexpectedly with budget deficits. And as a result, we had to do perhaps the most painful thing we have ever had to do, to look at student athletes in the eye and tell them that no, we could no longer support your team, the sport that you love and you came to Maryland to play. And we vowed this will never happen again, not so long as we're here. We came up with a plan. We're going to pull ourselves out of that financial hole, but we're still living paycheck to paycheck. What the membership of the Big Ten does is to enable us to truly guarantee the financial sustainability of Maryland athletics for a long, long, long time. The director and I are absolutely committed to begin the process to reinstate some of the teams that we had to terminate. We are also committed to strengthen further the support that we give to our student athletes, that they have the best possible experience, because when we came here with the number of teams that we had, the support was at the bottom of the ACC. Secondly, I believe that athletics, important as it is, must be integrated with the mission of the university. There has to be an alignment between athletics and academic values and priorities. We are committed to take some of our new resources and earmark them to support the educational enterprise of the university, to support the overall university's educational mission, number one, and number two, to earmark substantial funds in support of, to make possible affordable college education for students in need. And I'm not talking about student athletes. The issues of affordability are paramount in these tight times. We are doing nothing less than developing a new financial paradigm for intercollegiate athletics, whereby historically, as you know, the university supports athletics. We want a paradigm whereby athletics help support the university. And thirdly, we wanted to join the Big Ten because we also wanted to join the associated academic consortium known as the CIC, the Committee for Institutional Cooperation. The Big Ten institutions, as you know, are all our peer institutions, top-ranked, flagship and AAU universities, very similar profiles to ours. And they have a network of collaboration and exchange in education, research, and innovation that we can take advantage of and that will further propel our upward ascendancy in academic excellence. The opportunity for our faculty and staff and students to have regular interaction with peer institutions, peer public flagship universities, was a very, very major consideration of mine, of the Chancellor, and of the Board of Regents. Let me just conclude by saying I am very aware that for many of our Terp fans and alumni, their reaction is stunned. They're stunned, they're disappointed. There's a sense of sadness of leaving a conference of which we've been a founding member for 59 years. Not different from when we left the Southern Conference that we also helped found, and after 32 years went to the ACC. But we will always cherish the rivalries, the memories, the traditions of the ACC, because they will be part, always, of the Terrapin story. And for those alumni and Terp fans, I just want to say this. I made this decision as best as I could in consultation with key stakeholders and doing due diligence with only one objective in mind: to do what is best for the University of Maryland. My obligation as president is not to any conference. It is to the best interest of the University of Maryland over the long haul. And in this case, it is for academic excellence as part of this consortium. It is for the financial sustainability of athletics, so that no other president will have to face what Kevin and I had to face in terms of cutting teams. And it is also, of course, lifting Maryland athletics so it can compete at the highest level possible. So today marks a new day in the chapter of the University of Maryland, in its history. We are very excited and we're very confident as we create our future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wallace. And as Wallace noted earlier today, he and Kevin Anderson and I were with the University System of Board of Regents, who, after a couple of days of intense deliberation, voted overwhelmingly to endorse the application of College Park to move into the Big Ten. The benefits of this move for the athletic department have been outlined and are clear. Chief among them are better support for our student athletes and the possibility of bringing back some teams that the university had to cut. Speaking personally, I support the move largely because of what it means to the institution academically. Having been a president in the Big Ten, I know firsthand that it is not just an athletic conference. It is also an academic alliance of major research universities. Wallace referred to this alliance, which is known as the CIC. And it includes the University of Chicago because it was, as many know, a founding member of the Big Ten. Among other things, from personal experience, I know that the CIC engages in joint research projects among its members, provides for student exchanges within the institutions of the CIC, shares library resources, maintains a high-speed internet connection to share information and data among the institutions, has a shared study abroad program for its undergraduates. There's nothing to match this level of academic collaboration in any other major conference except possibly the Ivy League. This is what excites me about the move. It advances the academic mission of the university. There's one other reason why I support the move. I have said publicly on numerous occasions that my concern about all the money being generated by intercollegiate athletics program is that it stays in athletics and in many cases creates an imbalance with spending on the core missions of our nation's universities. Wallace has made it very clear that this will not be the case for UMCP as a Big Ten member. As a first step, you just heard him make a commitment to using a meaningful portion of the revenue to support the academic enterprise and in particular, need-based aid for undergraduate students. He has assured me that other academic investments will follow. This sends a powerful message about the appropriate role of athletics within our universities, and it's the kind of commitment that I hope other universities, both in the Big Ten and elsewhere, will emulate. Thank you.
Kevin Anderson next.
Good afternoon, everybody. My coaches whispered to me, make it short and sweet because they're getting tired of standing up. I'd like to recognize my coaches and staff for the support they've given us through these very optimistic and great times. I work with the best people in the country. The reason why I've spent 25 years of my career in athletics is because of the people that you meet, the student athletes, and the positive impact they have on our lives. The dedication and devotion of not just the student athletes, but their families and their extended adoptive families, the alumni and the fans, they inspire me every day. That's why this decision was very difficult. We're asking our fans to remember and celebrate 60 years of tradition and history. That will always be part of Maryland, while supporting us as we begin this new chapter. They will ensure that we will have a great and positive future. For those of you who are asking and saying, why are we joining the Big Ten? It guarantees our athletic department and our university financial stability. We have done so much with so little for so long. Now imagine what our teams are going to be able to accomplish with the financial stability that we'll be able to present them. For me, the most important thing today is that no future Maryland athletic director will ever have to look in young men and young women's eyes and say that you can't compete here anymore, that you can't wear the colors for this school because we can't afford to support your teams financially. The Big Ten offers us this financial stability, the security, and enough to make sure that we are going to be competitive not only in the Big Ten, but nationally. The Big Ten offers our students many opportunities. One of the great things about this is that they will compete at the highest level, but with our global network, the Big Ten TV network, their families will be able to follow them wherever they play and be able to watch their young man and young daughter compete on the playing field. Recently, we completed and published a comprehensive plan that was going to strategically march where we go from here. The Maryland Way. With the Big Ten's help, we are going to achieve that for our student athletes. Thank you very much.
Commissioner.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Let me first just say that earlier in the day, the Big Ten Conference received the application of the University of Maryland to become a member. Shortly thereafter, all 12 of our presidents assembled on a conference call, and quite honestly, they were giddy. They were really excited. There was a unanimous vote in support, and Maybe some people, fear the turtle. We embrace the turtle. We embrace the turtle today. Today's Maryland's day, and I'm proud and humbled to be here. Let me just say a couple of things. I grew up north of here in New Jersey, and I went to school south of here, and I played a lot of basketball. I shouldn't say. I sat on the bench for a lot of basketball at Cole Fieldhouse. But there were a couple games that were pretty important to me. One against Lefty Driesell when he was at Davidson. And so I have memories of College Park as a student athlete, as a student who went back and forth between New Jersey and Chapel Hill. I also spent a summer here in the summer of '68, tending the gardens at Lafayette Park across the street from the White House. So I feel the place. I've had a lot of friends go to school here, compete here, and it's a remarkable place. I was looking at some of the data about the university. 1/3 in-state students, 1/3 out-of-state students, and 1/3 global students. $500 million of sponsored research. It is a very remarkable place, and very excited to have the University of Maryland in the Big Ten. I would say that there has been a paradigm shift in intercollegiate athletics, and it brings about more change. It's not always comfortable change. We're a pretty traditional place. This is our 117th season in intercollegiate athletics. Most of our schools date to the middle of the 19th century. We've been very stable for a very long time. But we realize that all of the major conferences are slightly outside of their footprint. We focused on the University of Maryland as a great university, as a flagship university in an adjacent state, rich with terrific demographics, rich with great political institutions, great media institutions, great high schools producing great students. And to be honest with you, we believe that the association is one that will benefit both of us. If it doesn't benefit both of us, then it's not a good relationship. And so that's what partnerships are. We believe in partnerships. We have a Rose Bowl partnership that goes back to 1947, and when everybody poo-pooed the bowl system, we stuck by the Rose Bowl. We built equity in the Rose Bowl. We have a relationship with the Ivy League right now to study the impact of concussions on young athletes. That's an important collaboration to us. We have relationships in Texas, in Florida, and California that are important to us. We're not a national conference, but we're now a conference in 2 areas of the country. And let me just tell you, you're not just joining a Midwestern conference. We're moving here. We'll have offices on the East Coast. We're not asking you to become us. We're just asking to partner with you in academics, in research, in athletics. And we're happy that we've been able to provide you a method for seeing the future, working with us, and I couldn't be happier to be here today. I know that there's some ambivalence, and I know that there may be some anger, but I hope that over time that we can embrace you, that you can learn to be our partner, and that together we become much better than we are without each other. Thank you.
Hey, before I open up for question and answer, I missed somebody in the introductions, and I apologize. Marvin Rabowski is the chair of the executive committee of the College Park Foundation Board of Trustees and a huge supporter of the university, and we're happy to have him with us. So with that, we'll open it up for a question and answer. Jeff Barker.
Thanks. Yeah, Jeff Barker with the Baltimore Sun. This is for one of the Maryland people. I wanted to ask, when was the first approach made by the Big Ten? When did this start? And also, who had the final authority for approving Maryland's decision here? Was it the Chancellor's office, or was it the Board of Regents, in fact, who has the final authority to approve this move?
Well, working backwards, there was extensive conversation and eventually a vote by the Board of Regents. And that vote, as you have heard, was overwhelmingly in support of endorsing our application. So yes, I've been in very close contact with the Chancellor throughout the entire process. And it takes 2 people to dance. We had some conversations, and I can be very honest, when we first had those conversations, we were not thinking of moving. There was no reason for us to move. But as those conversations proceeded, then we began to see perspectives and value about joining. And then finally, I think within the past 2 or 3 weeks, maybe just the past 2 weeks, that's when all the conversations really began in earnest.
I'm sorry, yeah, with Mike in the back there, please.
Yes, Keith Daniels, Fox 45 News in Baltimore. This is for President Lowe. Mr. President, I know you touched on it briefly, but again, can you revisit this point of what about some of those opponents who say, especially the students, who say leaving the ACC, these are their words, we spoke to them earlier, shows no loyalty or no concern about tradition. They go on to say it's not all about money. How do you respond to that?
That's a very real concern. I respect that view. Many of them have that view. But I would say, of course, it's never about money. That's why I said for me and for the board and for the faculty and many students as well, the academic component is very, very important. I don't know that we would have done this kind of a deal if it were a conference that did not have this consortium. So there's an academic component to it. Secondly, there are many stakeholders. I, as a university president, have to have responsibility for the entire university. It is not only about the sports fans, even though they are a very important constituent. There are faculty, there are staff, there are alumni, and many of them have interests in the university other than sports. One has to look at the totality of the situation. And as I've identified, it is not only about money. Somebody has to pay the bills. What is at issue is the long-term viability of Maryland athletics as we know it. And I want to leave a legacy where for decades to come, long after I'm gone, no president is going to sit around and wonder, is Maryland athletics as we know it going to survive? That is what is at stake. And I will say one other thing. Tradition is very important. That's why I say we shall always treasure our ACC traditions. After all, 59 years. But, you know, the ACC has now expanded to the Midwest. We are bringing in, with my strong support, 2 other institutions, Pittsburgh and Syracuse, as the result of which we will play our traditional basketball rivals only once every 2 years here. The world of ACC, as we have known it, is in the midst of change. And the job of a president is not just to look at the past and the present, but to also to look in the future and lead us to that future. It is to be ahead of change rather than having change overwhelm us.
Let's do Jenna right here in the front.
Jenna Johnson with Washington Post. What time was the Board of Regents meeting this morning? Where was it held? And why wasn't the public notified that this meeting was happening?
Well, the meeting was a continuation of a conference call executive session that the board began on Sunday. And the meeting was suspended and restarted this morning in executive session, which the board is entitled to hold to consider contracts and financial arrangements. And the meeting was, many of the members in the meeting this morning were on the telephone still, but some board members gathered at the University of Maryland, Baltimore, which has a very convenient parking arrangement and very appropriate conference facilities.
And why not let the public know that you were having those meetings yesterday and today?
Well, according to the Attorney General, we followed all of the procedures that we are expected to follow in holding an executive session, for the board to hold an executive session.
We'll do Heather here, and then Don.
Either for the president or the athletic director, who informed ACC Commissioner John Swofford of this decision? When was he informed, and what was the vote?
I informed Commissioner Swofford at approximately noon today, shortly after the vote of the Board of Regents.
I don't have the tally, but it was overwhelming, like 90%.
Don Marcus from the Baltimore Sun. Dr. Lowe, you have stated in the past that you questioned whether the exit fee was enforceable. Will you plan to challenge that in terms of paying that $50 million exit fee? And if you do, how is that going to play out in terms of how Maryland will be able to afford that?
The exit sum, and I use the word sum, which is a neutral term rather than fee or penalty. The exit sum of $50 million is, of course, a very large sum. But I said that we have an arrangement under our membership that will assure the future of Maryland athletics for decades to come. And as we crunch those numbers, we are able to deal with this issue. Now, insofar as the exact amount of that sum, that is something that we will discuss in private with the ACC. That is something that we will discuss with their team and our team.
Yeah, right there in the middle aisle, Jody.
Hi, John Doman with WNEW Radio. You guys alluded to bringing some new teams, I guess, to some of the teams you eliminated back into the fold. Have you given much thought to which teams may be coming back in the years to come?
Kevin, you take that one?
Dr. Lowe and I have talked about this, and he is going to bring the commission back, and we're going to present all the information about where we are, what we're looking at, what the future might be. So at that time, we will have an open forum with the people who've participated in the commission, and then we'll go from there as we gather data and we share with everybody.
Right here? Then right here.
From Mr. Delaney, with the conference at 13 schools and rumors of Rutgers possibly being added, can you comment at all about the possibility of future expansion?
Today's Maryland's Day, and I won't have any comment about any other institution today. Thank you.
Let's go right back here. Jody, you see the guy there?
Hi, Jerry Coleman, 105.7 The Fan, for President Lowe and Mr. Anderson. President Lowe, how stressful, emotional has this whole process been over this past weekend with all the surroundings and division amongst the population out there about this? Mr. Anderson, my question for you is, what about the status of Maryland lacrosse in the Big Ten?
The Commissioner and I have already discussed this, and that we're looking at several opportunities that we will put on the table for both our men and women. They're both positive, but we want to sit down and look at all the options before we commit. One thing that I did do is I discussed with both coaches that we do have several plans that we could put in place and what's going to be best for our program. The Commissioner and I agreed that we'll move forward and discuss.
With regard to the first part of your question, this decision is a very, very big decision that impacts not just athletics, but academics and finances and the future of the university. And surely there's nothing more exciting than to help shape the future of this university.
Okay, we got one in the back here, yeah?
Yeah, two questions.
Name and affiliation, please.
Tracy Wilkins, NBC4 Washington. The first question is about the football team competing in the Big Ten. Are there any concerns about that? And, well, let me just start with that question.
Kevin.
Coach Etzel and I have talked about this, and that we believe that with the recruiting and the improvement on the team, and we'll continue to improve, that we will take on the Big Ten, and we feel that we will be very competitive.
And Mr. Anderson, you were also saying that you're going to be looking at statistics and data to figure out which teams you're going to bring back. What is that data exactly? What will you be looking at?
Well, President Lowe and I have talked about with the commission that looked at intercollegiate athletics at the University of Maryland, and when we decided that we needed to make some cuts. We'll also sit down with them and go over the data again and look at everything that we looked at before, like financials and everything else. So once we present that and see what's feasible, if it's feasible, then we'll move on and we'll start further discussions about the possibility of bringing back the teams.
Yeah, back there on the left, yeah, with the jacket.
Lowell Melser from WBA-LTV. Just a very quick question about the $50 million. Did the university vote no on that because they knew that this was in the works and this was going to happen?
Absolutely not. At the time this issue came up, I had no conversations with the Big Ten, but I've been a professor of law for 30 years, and this kind of excess sum is known as a liquidated damage. I have written many law school exams on this subject, and I address it as a legal and philosophical issue.
Yeah, right next to you. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm Bruce DePoit from News Channel 8, class of 1984. It feels like you tried to get this buttoned down and to have the train leave the station before there was too much public discussion or conversation. Could there have been and should there have been more discussion within the Maryland community about the pros and cons of staying and leaving?
Jim, you want to address it?
Yeah, the process is an interesting one. As you know, not only the major conferences, but probably 20 or 30, I think there are only 2 conferences that haven't experienced change of membership in the last decade. I think one is the Ivy Group, the other may be the MEAC. Other than that, there's been a lot of change, and it's occurred in a lot of different ways. You know, it's hard to even describe what categories, what change fits into. But certainly the ACC has, you know, expanded probably as much as any conference. We decided about 3 years ago, after spending 20 years with 11 members, and there's really nothing good about 11 members unless you like a prime number. Didn't really square into any kind of divisional structure or easy scheduling, but we decided at a certain point in time that we wanted to explore expansion. So we did something very unusual that no other conference has done. We announced it. And we spent 6 months, you know, working with different institutions in a private way. Every one of them understood that the ability to navigate, to discuss, to do due diligence, and to really, it was impossible to do. Now, we put ourselves in jeopardy because we are upfront and transparent about it. And the speculation that occurred on a half dozen to a dozen campuses throughout the country was unnerving for them. It upset their membership, and it was almost, it was beautifully transparent and it was beautifully dysfunctional at the same time. We were unable to get to a conclusion. Every day, every talk show, every radio show, every pundit was speculating and delivering news as if it was a fait accompli. All of it was wrong. It was all wrong. So I'm confident that each institution has its own methodology. We work with the leadership. We understand going into it what the processes are, whether it's a board of trustees, a chancellor, a president, coaching staffs, and we rely on them to deal with their publics. But I will tell you this, in this case, we were there at 12 quite happy, but change kept happening. Conferences were outside the region over and over and over again. In the case of the Big Ten, you know, we've had a good history, 117 years of it. Sometimes our teams are modest, sometimes they're good, sometimes they're great. Our universities are always great, and they're powered by support, by great demographics, by great institutions that they're surrounded by. So for us, we looked at Maryland when the opportunity arose as being in a contiguous area, flagship institution, commitment to excellence, and we thought, given what had happened around the country, that this was a natural response, and if they were interested in us, we were certainly interested in them.
Could one of the Maryland people respond to my question, though? Please?
Absolutely. I wanted to give him an opportunity to respond first in terms of setting the larger context. The fact that it was a pretty compressed process, I would say a little bit over 2 weeks, does not mean that this was not after extensive due diligence, bringing in experts to go over the financials, we had conversations with a limited number, 20, very, very senior people, stakeholders at this university. State officials, elected state officials from at the very top. Major donors. We involved at least a couple of students. Of course, the regents. So we touched base with a number of people that represented a broad spectrum of our stakeholders. Leadership, especially on controversial issues, cannot be exercised in the public limelight. Leadership is not by having plebiscitary governance. It's not by putting your finger up and seeing which way the wind blows. It is about doing what is best for the university over the long haul, consulting with people, praying about it, doing due diligence, seeking expert advice, consulting with the Board of Regents, consulting with the Board of Trustees, and then finally one makes a decision. Somebody asked how intense it was. It is suffice to say that I have not had much sleep over the past 2.5 weeks because it has been a very, very intense process. Let me just conclude also by saying, because it just reminded me of what Lyndon Johnson once said. It is easy to do the right thing. It is hard to know what is the right thing to do. I came to the conclusion that this is the right thing to do after extensive consultation and analysis.
Comcast Sportsnet, Joe, right there.
Rob Carlin with Comcast Sportsnet. This is for Kevin. Much like students, the coaches came here to coach in ACC basketball, ACC soccer, lacrosse, football. Was there any sort of shock when you went to them and said, we're moving to the Big Ten, which is a great conference, but it's still not the ACC?
Yes. I talked to many of the coaches, and at first it was like going through all of the process of grieving. And so then we talked about it, and then at the end of the day, when we sat down and we looked at the Big Ten and the ACC and what it means to be a new partner with the Big Ten, that everybody agreed that this is the best way to move our program forward.
Yeah, right there.
Jim, just how long has Maryland been on the Big Ten's radar, even if this just came together in the last couple of weeks?
You know, when we, I guess it was maybe 3 years ago, I don't have a precise date, we went through a process of looking about expanding to 12. When we did that, we also looked at models 14 and models with 16. And while we never had direct conversations with them, we recognized that if we were going to be outside of our region, that obviously schools like Maryland, major research institutions in areas rich with demographics, but we ended up concluding at the time that Nebraska was the right fit in many ways. But I think we then explored collaborations with the Pac-12. We thought that that was a way perhaps to expand without expanding. That fell through. They weren't able to accommodate. And what was continuing to happen was, whether it was in Texas or Missouri or Pennsylvania or Indiana or New York or Massachusetts or Utah or Colorado, conferences were getting out of their natural geographic boundaries. And that's no indictment, that's just a statement of fact with respect to what has happened in intercollegiate athletics. We're fortunate that in adjacent contiguous states exist great universities that match the mission of our schools and allowed us at least to explore these possibilities. So the only thing I would say that has been constant is the change around the country. It's been written about a great deal. In both cases, whether one was public or one was more private, I think the first one, we probably created more problems than we could have ever considered by announcing the fact we're going to look at this over a 6 to 18 month period. It created all sorts of chaos for institutions, and many people called us and said, please don't do that again, because you unnerve, you may end up with one institution, but you unnerve 30, and you unnerve 5 conferences. And so we thought that the second time around, we would be more delicate about it, and if it happened, it happened, and if it didn't happen, it didn't happen. But in every case, whether it's Penn State or whether it was Nebraska or whether it was any of the other schools that have been added to the ACC or others, those are issues between an institution itself and choosing its destiny, and the conferences can be receptive or not. In this case, we were very receptive, and we're fortunate that Maryland made the decision that it did, but recognizing full well the change is difficult for people.
We have a 4 p.m. teleconference, so we have time for maybe one or two more questions here. One or two. Yeah, right.
Dave Long from Channel 9. For Kevin, Mr. Anderson, obviously there have been some alumni who have come out today critical of the move. As you talk to those alumni, what's your message to them? And do you think that will be one of the toughest jobs that you have now moving forward to convince them that this is the right thing to do at the right time?
Well, over the last 2 years, I've had many conversations that have been difficult in one way or fashion.
Sure.
But, you know, we talk about why are we doing this, and we talk about the why. We just put out a strategic plan. And it's because of the student-athlete experience and that we're trying to give our student-athletes the best experience. And so making this decision, we feel that this is going to give all our student-athletes the best experience possible. And as I talked about it up at the podium, the one thing that I know that this will do, that it will put us in financial stabilities where we will never have to go and sit up in front of a team and tell them that we're going to discontinue their sport. So what we understand also is that tradition and history, well, we're looking at this thing called college athletics is evolving each and every day, and that the tradition and what the ACC, the Big Ten, and everybody else was 10, 20 years ago is no longer the same. So the thing that we have in our hearts, the University of Maryland, that will always have that University of Maryland experience. And I think that's where we start with the tradition and the historical value of this.
Comcast again, right there, Jody.
Thank you. Rob Carlin again from Comcast Sportsnet. Dr. Lowe, if one of these students that you had to look in the face and say we're discontinuing your sport walks in and says, wait, there was no money to discontinue, to run my sport, but you can pay maybe $50 million to move conferences, what do you say to them?
I would say two things. We would not have entered into this agreement unless we had a plan, an agreement that would ensure the future of Maryland athletics for decades to come. And that insurance does include bringing back teams, financially speaking, on which teams, that's up to the athletic director, and also a process, a fair, open process for making that decision. And it takes into account the exit amount. I will also say one other thing, since you asked about the students. I hope I have it. Just to show you how diligent our students are, this is an email I got at 3:20 in the morning from the executive board of the Student Government Association. If you will permit me, I will read just one sentence, because that student was able to write in one sentence what's taken me many, many minutes to say. Although we mourn the traditions that would inevitably be lost, joining the Big Ten would fundamentally transform our university for the better. Signed, Executive Board of the Student Government Association.
All right, Jeff, but this will, and then one more after Jeff.
Yeah, thanks. Jeff Barker again with the Baltimore Sun. Kevin, is there any possible negotiation in the period in which Maryland will leave the ACC, or is that definitely July 2014? And is there any awkwardness in remaining with the ACC when, in fact, everyone knows that Maryland is going to be going to the Big Ten?
Like today's the first day, and we're announcing this today, so we haven't had the opportunity to sit down and talk about any of this. In the near future, next couple of weeks, I'm sure we will have some discussions. Yes, I believe there will be some awkwardness. I mean, those are my colleagues. I've grown up with a lot of them that are athletic directors. John Swafford is a friend of mine, was a friend of mine. I don't know after today how he's going to feel. But you know, I respect what John has done as a commissioner of the ACC. So as we move on with this, I think that those kind of questions will be answered, but I can't answer that today.
Okay, right there is the last one.
Dr. Lowe, just some clarification. In terms of this whole exit fee, it's still ambiguous as to whether or not you will negotiate this, and where will the money come from? Will it come from taxpayers or the university? That seems to be a lingering question.
Intercollegiate athletics at Maryland, unlike many other public institutions, is completely self-sustaining. There are no taxpayer dollars whatsoever, which is one of the problems that we had budget deficits. As you know, 92, 93% of Division I schools do not make money, and the only reason they're not cutting teams is because they receive subsidies. We do not subsidize, not a single penny of taxpayer dollars goes into whatever exit fee will eventually happen, if any.
Okay, we're going to do a photo op up here. We're going to move these chairs out of the way, and then we're going to do a picture for everybody, but appreciate it. Thank you all for coming. Of course, you're all welcome to join the teleconference. It starts at 4 p.m. Thank you.